Welcome back, everyone. This is the part of our every fortnight streams where we do the Through Our Eyes podcast. This podcast aims to highlight marginalised creators and their stories, and generally, it's been a very interesting ride that came about from one of Paige's, my co-hosts, projects too. Would you like to tell us a bit about that?
So, as you've undoubtedly heard before, it came about from the Through Our Eyes streams, where we basically just get a load of people together and pile them into a stream, and we all tend to answer the same questions about a topic, generally based around a particular area of marginalisation or intersectionality. But what we found was that just trying to talk to 5 or 6 people at the same time is quite difficult if they wanted to talk a bit more in depth about a particular topic. So with Drac, we came up with the idea to take people one by one and actually dedicate a couple of hours to each person to understand their story a little bit more and to learn a bit more about them as opposed to just the topic itself. So that's where we are. And we've there's definitely a couple of running themes, but I'm not sure they're particularly fantastic. But,
our running themes constipation,
just sheer anger,
it's fine.
Depression, all happy stuff.
Okay, so what we do here is we will be asking our guests today questions. If you would like to submit any questions to be asked at the end, there is a channel points redemption that you can use to submit your questions so that I can record them for later. The alerts should be off. I'm pretty sure they were off, so that we won't be disturbed while we're talking about potentially quite serious topics that obviously it's important for us to try and focus in on. And also we are recording so that we can put this out on various podcast platforms as we can. Is it only me overpowering?
I was going to say, there's no way I'm quiet, so something's interesting there.
That better?
Yeah, I don't think anyone's ever accused me of being quiet.
Hopefully. Okay, so this is where we introduce today's guest. Hello! Would you like to tell us who you are, a bit about yourself, your platforms, and etc., your pronouns?
Sure. For those who don't know me, my name is Steven, but I also go by MrDudeGuySir, which is my Twitch handle. I also go by Mr. Dude. I know 5 syllables is a lot to say. It's like a bunch of marbles in your mouth. But people call me Dude Guy sometimes. Some people call me just simply Dude. He, him pronouns. And what else did you ask? Sorry, I have MS. I forget stuff.
Your platforms, what you do as a creator, such forth.
So I stream. I'm a very casual streamer. I don't really stream for any kind of income. I mostly stream for just to make friends, because it's really hard for me to get out and meet people. I also stream to raise awareness for multiple sclerosis, and also to give me some kind of hobby that MS hasn't taken away yet.
Okay. And where can people find you? Like,
you can find me right at that link that was just posted in chat.
Okay, cool. Sorry, my brain just blanked there for a second. Just completely. Right, yes. So, what brought you here today to talk to us?
I wanted an opportunity to spread more awareness for multiple sclerosis and to kind of alleviate any kind of stigmas that are attached to it, not just multiple sclerosis, but other chronic illnesses that people go through and the similar things that we all share, like day by day life that we had to struggle with. We might have all different illnesses, but we still experience the same things. We experience a lot of misunderstandings, and we have a lot of ableist people trying to diminish and invalidate us. And I'm trying to clear that up by this platform and this podcast today.
Okay, well, we really appreciate you taking the time to come and talk to us, especially about what is often quite a sensitive and personal subject. So, if at any point there's something that makes you uncomfortable, or that you just want to move on topics, feel free to say, or we can take a break. Otherwise, if you're all good, we can jump into our first question.
I think I'm good. The only thing I could think of is I've been drinking a lot of water today, so I may have to take a bio break at some point. But I'll let you know. I won't just get out of my seat without saying anything.
Okay.
Where'd he go? Okay, he's done with this podcast.
It's all good. It's all good. Right. Okay. So our first question is pretty standard to all of our guests, but tell us the lowdown of your story. Why are you here, and when did it start?
Why I'm here is what I previously mentioned. I saw that on the GlitchCo server at one point, you were, I think it was in collaborations, you were asking people if they wanted to be a part of the podcast. And I was like, ooh, yeah, I totally want to be part of that. And what was the other part of that question you asked?
So the lowdown of your story,
my story.
So
Okay.
when did it start? What do you experience, and such forth?
Right. Okay. So my story begins. I was very young. I was at least 13, and I noticed some changes going on in my body. Not puberty, but well, yeah, that. But
I mean, that's a stinker
no.
too. But
Yeah. We're all diagnosed with that at some point. But no. I noticed I was really tired sometimes, but it wasn't the kind of tired that you feel when you're sleepy. It's the kind of tired, it's more fatigue, and fatigue is more or less more of a resistance. You feel heavy, not only physically, but mentally as well. And I noticed I also had some other symptoms. I had some pins and needles feelings. I kept telling my parents that it feels like ants are biting my feet over and over. And so they took my shoes off and looked at my feet, like, oh, there's nothing there, you know. So they just kind of just brushed, I also had mood swings sometimes too at that age. And, they kind of just brushed all that off as, puberty and stuff. It wasn't until I was 19 is when I was finally diagnosed with multiple sclerosis. And the story with that is how I got diagnosed. How I knew that there was something definitely wrong was I was driving home from visiting a girlfriend at the time. And I noticed that every time I looked to the left, I saw double. But every time I looked to straight and to the right, I saw fine. And so when I finally came home, They were saying that I look cockeyed when I looked to the left. I was like, I thought they were joking at first, but then like some concern grew, and so I went to an optometrist, and he looked at my eye, and first he did was I believe he did like a diabetic test to see if I was diabetic or something, but that was negative, and so he referred me to an ophthalmologist, which, if you're not familiar with what an ophthalmologist is, they are more like a optometrist slash neurologist, like combination. And so he did some tests for me, and he suspected I had something, but wasn't sure. So he referred me to a neurologist. And from there, I had an MRI and a spinal tap, a lumbar puncture. And a funny story about the lumbar puncture.
There's always a funny story about the lumbar puncture.
Say, you don't want a funny story about a lumbar puncture.
Yes.
No, I'm sorry. It's just I knew the moment that you said that you were going to say funny story.
So,
go on.
They told me this would give me a lumbar puncture, and I was 19. I was like, what the heck is that thing, you know? So there's like, well, we're going to extract some spinal fluid out of your back with a needle. I'm like, well, I'm going to get some anesthetic first, right? And they're like, yeah. So a nurse walks in with a long needle. And I was like, whoa, 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 whoa. I thought you said you're just going to give me some anesthetic. And she said, this is the anesthetic. This is Novocaine. And I was like, well, do you have anesthetic for the anesthetic?
Yeah.
But yeah, they did lumbar puncture, and oh my gosh, if you ever had one, you already know. Basically, what a lumbar puncture is they extract spinal fluid out of your back, and that same fluid is in your brain. That's what your brain floats around in. And so when you have less of that, whenever you're standing up, your head hurts like a mother. And so I had to just lay down the whole time. And then a few days later, I found out that I was diagnosed with multiple sclerosis at age 19. And that was exactly 19 years ago. And I am 38 now. So if you do the math, I've had MS for half of my life.
So, as from my understanding, and with a very close relative with MS, for those who don't know, I'm right in saying that's pretty early for a diagnosis of MS. Like usually it's 30s onwards for most sufferers. So this has been quite a significant impact on your life, I assume.
Yes. Speaking of like the age thing, you know, most people like you said get it around, you know, age 30. And I visited other neurologists and stuff, and they didn't believe that I had MS, so they kept doing other tests. I'm like, no, I have MRI and you know, the spinal tap to prove it. And so being 19 years old, being diagnosed with anything at 19 years old, you're like freaking out, you know? And I was really scared. I was like, am I going to die? You know, I didn't really know anything about it. And being diagnosed with anything at that age is very scary, especially when you're diagnosed with an illness that you can't even pronounce, let alone, you know, ever heard of. So that was a very scary time for me. That was around the time, like, you know, I was planning to go to college and, you know, a lot of other things, a lot of other opportunities. But because of MS, I kind of halted stuff. When I was diagnosed, I was 6 months in working my first job at a computer repair shop. and like 6 months later, I just had to quit because I kept getting flare-ups and relapses and things like that. And at age, it took several years to get on disability. I think I was 23 when I finally got on it. And so from there, I tried to do, just working on the computers from my home as, some kind of supplement to my income. And then from there, I met a friend on this MS support group, and we were friends for quite a while. And then she's from New York, and I always told her that I always wanted to visit New York, like see the Statue of Liberty, things like that. And so one day she sent me a little care package of New York stuff. So I opened it up. It had like a little tiny Statue of Liberty and, I Heart New York t-shirt and all that stuff. And there was this paper airplane in there too. So I called her whenever I got the box, and I was like, "Hey, what am I going to do with this, paper airplane? Am I going to use this to fly to New York or something?" And like, she dead seriously said yes. I was like, "What?" I opened it up. Guess what it was?
Was
A
it a
plane
check
ticket.
or ticket?
Plane ticket, yeah. So long story short, yeah, we got married and all that stuff, and yeah.
Story. Oh, that is so lovely.
We're not together anymore.
Oh.
But,
Damn it!
yeah.
It was very nice moment.
Our story was actually put on some kind of blog somewhere. But anyways, but yeah, because of MS, it kept me from a lot of things. I did actually end up going to college. I just took like a 1-year course at this technical college just to put something on a resume, and I was able to like buy a house and stuff like that. So a lot of things that I thought I couldn't do because I had MS, that just goes to show, just don't give up. Just keep trying. If you have, goals and dreams, don't let your illness get in the way of that. Of course, it will keep you from doing what you want, but there's always a way. There's always some kind of loophole that you can find, some kind of support or association or anything that can help you in that way.
So, in terms of post-diagnosis, how has MS affected you physically or mentally, or how has it impacted your life after the diagnosis?
So after the diagnosis, I've went through several types of treatment. Basically, what neurologists do with MS treatments is they'll throw an MS treatment at you. They'll wait a while. They'll do an MRI. If you have flare-ups or you have more lesions on your MRI, they'll put you on something else. I think I'm now on my 8th treatment. But we've come a long way in treatments. Back then, I think it was just shots or steroids back then. But there were several times in my life where I had to use a wheelchair. I couldn't walk at all. There's times where I had vision problems. There's a period of time where I was legally blind for a little bit. It's a constant push and pull on how I was physically. As far as mentally, I think MS does give you depression in several ways. Just having a chronic illness alone will give you depression, especially at a young age. But I think it does it physiologically too, something with your biochemistry in your brain happening all the time, things like that. But there has definitely been some ups and downs in my life. Before my diagnosis, I used to skateboard all the time. I definitely can't do that now. Like 10 years ago, I used to go running all the time, and now I can't do that. I had a flare up back in December of 2020, and it definitely affected my balance, and I had to start walking with a cane. And I went through physical therapy, and I'm able to walk without it, but I'm still kind of shaky here and there. So another thing about any kind of illness that affects your mobility, I'll probably have to save this for the next upcoming question. But yeah, that's it for that.
And just for clarification and to make sure that we cover more of the basic points, what is MS and what type have you got?
So what MS is not, it's not Microsoft. It's not it's not an acronym for the state of Mississippi in the United States. It's not, some things I've heard people say, it's not multiple scoliosis. My spine isn't a pretzel or anything. It's not muscular dystrophy, which it's a different type of chronic illness. But multiple sclerosis, the second part of that word, sclerosis, I believe that's a Latin term for scarring. So in MS, your immune system attacks the central nervous system, your brain, and your spinal cord. It confuses it with viruses and bacteria, and it sees the nerves in your brain, and it attacks it. And imagine, how can I make a good analogy? Imagine your charger cable for your phone, right? Let's say you have a cat, that likes to gnaw on wires and stuff. If you use that same charger on your phone, sometimes it will charge, sometimes your phone won't, because of that frayed cable. That's basically what happens in MS. Your immune system frays the cables in your brain and your spinal cord. And because the brain controls everything, you can have all types of different symptoms. You can have problems with your bowels, your bladder, walking. You can have numbness in various areas. I'm trying to think of what symptoms I have. Chronic fatigue is my number one symptom that I experience every day, all day, every day. Trying to think what else. Sometimes I get the pins and needle feeling in my feet, and every day I feel different. It's basically me spinning a roulette wheel to see what it lands on, basically every day. And it's really hard to plan really anything, any kind of schedule, work schedule, sleep schedule, stream schedule. And that's why it was so hard going back to work. After I was on disability for a while, I wanted to give it a try and, actually go back to the workforce. And I did it for a while. And then I haven't worked for, I think, 5 years. And I told them before I started working, like, I have MS. There might be days where I call in sick. Hope you're okay with that. They're like, yeah, sure. but I missed too many days, and then they had to let me go because of that.
So, and what type do you have? Because there are multiple types of MS as well, aren't there?
Yes. So there's 3 main types, but actually there's 4. I'm not really too knowledgeable about the 4th one. So the first one is called clinically isolated syndrome. Basically, it's MS that's not MS. It's basically you have everything that goes on in regular MS, but it doesn't last past 24 hours. So that's like the first stage. What I have what's called relapsing remitting MS. Basically, I'll have a flare up and I'll have like symptoms like maybe like I have bad balance during that time, or I can't see out of my left eye or something like that. And then it'll go away and then I'll be fine. Then there is secondary progressive MS. Basically, it's kind of like relapsing remitting, except most times those symptoms don't clear up on their own. And then the final one is primary progressive, where there's a steady incline of disease progression where you keep getting relapses and they don't go in remission at all.
Okay, so I feel like that leads us quite nicely on to the next question of describing to us what it's like, what challenges you face on a day-to-day basis, on how it's affected your life physically and emotionally and socially.
So MS affects me obviously every day because there's no cure for MS. You can only just treat it and the symptoms. But here lately, I'll just use today as an example. So I woke up and I felt very very fatigued, and so it's really hard to get out of the bed. Just showering in itself is a huge chore. Like no joke, like I chugged an energy drink just to take a shower today. Like sometimes you have to do that with MS. Um some days I can't walk as great and I'll need to use my cane. Some days I don't need it. MS has affected my life in social matters where I can't get out much, so I can't really get out and meet people. And so sometimes, like even I even have trouble like just meeting people online because of MS, because I just want to lay in bed all day, or I don't have the spoons, if we all know what spoons are, to even like just turn my computer on and look at anything. I just want to rest all the time. And as far as like any other social aspects, dating's very difficult because you can't get out and meet people, and that's a hard thing. And also there's that thing where when you do meet someone, you're like, do I tell them I have MS, or do I just get to know them, get them to like me a little bit, and then tell them, or what, As far as other social things, sometimes because I go back and forth from using a mobility aid, people will see that and they're like, oh, you're faking it because last week you were using that cane and now you're not. And I'm like, yeah, but it changes every day, like I can't really, I wish there is a way that people could get in some kind of like MS simulator for a day just to see how I feel. but I also feel pain in my joints and in my muscles. Also, another big one, which I almost forgot to mention because of it, cognitive impairment is also a big one too, because sometimes I have trouble like thinking, sometimes I have trouble talking. Like my brain has a sentence in its head, but my mouth just can't spit it out, and vice versa. Like, oh, I could talk, but like my brain is just completely empty,
Yeah.
you know? Like memory, I have really hard time with. Any kind of multitasking. Boy, I sure did pick a great hobby with streaming, didn't I? With that, because you have to talk to people and play a game and all these other things. It's great.
It was snowing while I streamed the other day, and it was literally like that gif of a dog like looking at a squirrel and then just constantly back and forward for about 6 minutes before I was like, I'm going to shut the curtains.
Oh,
And then got stuck looking out the window for another 2.
that is
Oh wow.
100% why I always have the curtains closed. Otherwise, I'd be like, oh, there's a bed there. Oh, there's a...
Yeah. That just to say, yes, I think that's definitely something both Drac and I can say we've experienced / are currently experiencing / will experience later today. So
I mean,
Paige, I'm gonna respond to the question that you put.
all good.
A friend of mine recently been
well, that
diagnosed
was for
with MS.
later, once we have the...
wait.
Yeah, we have...
I just sit down and I knew I
brain.
would forget it.
Okay,
So...
I'll put it off. I'll
Yeah,
ignore
that's
that.
they don't worry about the podcast questions. I take them down so that we can ask them later, so that we don't get distracted and off topic.
Right. Also, that's another thing. People who suffer from ADHD, they'll if something pops up, they'll immediately they'll bring their attention to it while like bringing all these other things. I'm like it's like the opposite for me. Like I don't need any distraction at all. I need like clear cut, straight to the point, like no distractions, whatever. I basically, in a nutshell, what I'm trying to say is like I struggle with focusing, basically, and any kind of like interruptions or distractions like totally, disrupts me.
So I feel like this also, I mean, there's two things that this highlights to me that I wanted to bring up is one, with this, it shows how difficult it is to actually diagnose MS. Like, there is such a wide range of symptoms that and very little to actually confirm that it is MS, isn't there? So
Correct.
It's quite often quite a journey to get there.
It is a journey. There's no specific test for MS. Basically, what they do is they rule out everything first, and then they just kind of just process of elimination. That's how most MS diagnoses get, because MS mimics a lot of things like other diseases like lupus, Lyme disease, and some others that I can't think of at the moment.
And also, it very strongly highlighted for me how just because, as you were saying earlier, just because you're diagnosed with one thing compared to someone else who's diagnosed with another thing, there's a lot of crossover things. There's a lot of things that, as a group of chronically ill individuals, you experience, whether it be similar symptoms or similar issues with experiencing your day-to-day life, interacting with others, and support. Just thought I'd put that out there.
And also, with what you just said, there's also the vice versa, where you can, like, two people can have MS, but they won't have the same symptoms and everything. It's estimated that around 2 million people around the world have MS, compared to the almost 9 billion that's in the world. You know, MS is a rare disease, even though you know someone, or you know someone that knows someone who has MS. Basically, there's 2 million different types of MS out there, because no two people with MS have the same things. Case in point, my ex-wife, she had MS too, and I had it a lot worse than she did. And I was too tired to do some things, and she just thought I was just being lazy, when actually I was just really fatigued. And I also dated, after her, like, I dated someone else who had MS, who had a lot worse than I did, who was legally blind, you know, couldn't walk or anything like that. I pushed her in a wheelchair all the time. I did her makeup a few times. Really bad job. But yeah, we're even though we might have, me and another person might have MS, we might have extremely different things.
Oh, crap.
Did you lose it again, Drac?
Yeah.
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 Sorry, Strigger's here though.
Hi, Striga.
Hey, Striggs.
I was gonna ask a question and I can't fucking remember what it was.
It's gone.
Nope, it's gone. It's gone into the ether.
Excellent.
Was it about the stigmas? And
No,
stuff
I wasn't gonna move on quite yet because I'm trying to keep us.
It was an intermediary.
Yeah.
Intermediary question. There we are. We found it.
I got distracted. My problem is I got distracted, and then because I was also keeping an eye on chat, and then I also got distracted by the fact that I was thinking about how things. There we go. Right. Out of interest, does anyone in your family have it?
Yes. My aunt has MS. My mother's sister has MS.
So
she was diagnosed 3 years before I was. She chose not to be treated at all, and now she's bedbound and in really bad shape. But with that, I would like to also say that MS is not hereditary. Like, you can't pass it down straight down to your children, but it does have some genetic markers. So there can be a case where a father has MS and then his son has MS later on in life. Like, what are their names? The Osmonds. Donny Osmond and Stephen Osmond. They both have MS. But just because you have MS doesn't, like, just because I have MS, like, if I do have a child, it doesn't mean they'll get MS too. I mean, there's just a small chance due to, like, genetic and all that stuff, but
I ask purely because this has been the biggest sticking point for me in my medical care.
mm-hmm.
Because my father has it,
Mm-hmm.
and it's literally the biggest argument has always been, well, there's no genetic factor, so we won't test you.
Interesting.
But
I don't know who told you that, but they were lying or misinformed.
And also it's something that, because it's quite personal to me, it's something that I mean, I did papers on it, I did like research and such forth, like, as part of being a biologist and a geneticist. And so for me, it's always quite a matter of interest to look at, despite there not being a direct inheritance, the actual impact of genetics in the progression of this disease through lineages. So I found I'm always intrigued to find out if there is family members for those who have it, because it, for me, it's always been a case of it's not directly inherited, but you can pretty much guarantee there's going to be multiples in the family, but you can't guarantee who it's going to be.
We've got a similar issue in my family where my paternal grandfather, who I've never met, has MS, but I've never known him, so I don't know how, where he is or how it's been for the last sort of 30 years. But my father has ME and fibromyalgia, which we think could be misdiagnosed MS, but because it's not genetic, they will not test him. Because they're like, just because he's got it doesn't mean you will. We will not fund the testing. But also, I've been now diagnosed with fibro, which if it's misdiagnosed in me, we're going to have to try and fight to get it tested for my father. So it's one of these really difficult ones where it is like, we know it's not genetic, but there's definitely something going on here where you've diagnosed this with conditions which could look like another condition, but they won't rule out the other, which is a little bit of a pain. Seeing as you can't 100% diagnose fibro, it's mostly just a name for a collection of symptoms we can't categorize right now.
So
that's so wonderful.
But that brings me onto a question that I wanted to ask as well. So what has been your experience with medical professionals?
My experience with medical professionals, I was very lucky. The neurologist who diagnosed me, who's now the director of neurology for a very large hospital, he was a MS specialist. So you have your neurologist who basically knows, general things about, neurology and all those things. Then you have your MS specialist who specialize in those things. And I was lucky enough to be brought to an MS specialist, and he knew what to look for. He knew how to treat it and things like that. As far as other medical professionals, there's things like specialists who treat your symptoms, like your optometrist, your ophthalmologist, and things like that. Any kind of gastrointestinal issues you may have because of MS, like bladder bowel issues, things like that. And my mind completely blinked just now. we were on a topic.
Your experience with medical professionals.
Medical professionals, yes. So as I was moving around, of course, had to get new neurologists, stuff like that. And some of them looked at to see how young I was diagnosed with. And it was like, oh, I don't really believe you were diagnosed with MS. So they did some other tests. Well, this one neurologist thought I had neuromyelitis optica, which is another disease that's commonly mistaken for MS. I did test, but I'm like, no, dude, like, here's my MRI and everything. Like, here's the tests and stuff. But I've had a slew of different specialists and neurologists because I've had this disease for such a long damn time. I think I've had 2 neurologists retire on me. So of course I had to keep finding new ones. What really helped was the National MS Society, and they have, a large registry of good neurologists and MS specialists, and I had to reach out to them one time before to help me find a neurologist, and I was really grateful for that. But other than that, I've had some doctors do the whole, oh, oh, you need more vitamin D. Maybe you need to see a chiropractor, or have you tried yoga? Things like that. So had to be like, a lot of the neurologists that I saw, I knew more about MS than they did.
Which I can't say I'm surprised, honestly. But one thing that again is triggers me very much is the fact that if you've already been diagnosed with MS, the vitamin D isn't going to help at that point, because vitamin D is linked to the development of it, not the, help
Correct.
of it.
With vitamin D, you're low in vitamin D because you have MS. You can't get outside very much and stuff like that. That's I guess that's the angle that they're trying to prove. But it just seems like vitamin D to a lot of medical professionals is like, essential oils or anything like that,
Yeah.
Crystals
it's the hand wavy linking of well, we have some statistical significance towards this being connected to higher percentages of development in peoples situated in areas that lack vitamin D. So it's the same sense as, well, we've got evidence to suggest that your symptoms will be alleviated if you lose weight. It's like, okay, so yes, people are generally fitter if they exercise, but that does not in turn eliminate the original situation or disease or illness.
You got to be able to exercise first to fill that goal, so yeah.
But yes, so it's not going to say reassuring.
Going back to the genetics and things like that, there's really they like, scientists don't really know what causes MS, but they do have some research indicating that you're more likely to get MS if you're of Northern European descent. Climate has something to do about it. If you've been exposed to the Epstein-Barr virus, if you've had mononucleosis, several factors. And they keep finding new things like every once in a while.
In fact, I can give you a full list of those. Female, have someone in the family, have been exposed to Epstein-Barr virus, have lived in, as you said, Northern Europe, particularly if you're in England, Northern England. So...
Right. You've written a profile here.
But that's not to say...
It's not to say that just because you have those things that you will have it.
And also, not because... not to say that, if you're not white, you're safe. No.
No.
I know, Black people who have it. I know Asians who have it. I've heard of infants having MS.
It's it's also linked to age. It's like, oh, that's not something that you can get until you're like 30s, 40s.
Exactly.
Yep.
And
there's so much like archaic medical, theories going on about so many different illnesses, and it just boggles my mind, make me want to pull my hair out.
Yeah. Well, it's along the lines of if you've ever smoked, you're more likely to develop MS. It's like, if you've ever smoked, you're more likely to develop pretty much everything. It's one of those particular things, like air pollution, that generally tends to fuck with your cells. It's not a case of that smoking causes MS. It's just that, yeah, smoking's generally bad for you, but then again, also eating specific meats, having alcohol, all of these things are potentially going to increase your likelihood of developing a whole multitude of things, but that doesn't necessarily mean that they cause them. And
you have so many chances in winning so many different types of lotteries.
It's a case of you just throw a dart. One of these things can potentially be linked to that thing that you may or may not end up with.
Pretty much. And also another thing you just remind me of when you said woman. Women are actually 3 times more likely getting MS than men. There's also that fact too.
Yeah, and
your time's coming, Drac. No, just kidding.
no. Oh no. Let me add the last one to it as well. But there's no point in testing me for it. If you have another autoimmune disease, you are more likely to develop MS or another autoimmune disease. They tend to come in, friendship circles.
Support each other. It's hard work fucking up a body on your own.
The point being is that it's, if there's all of these factors, that's when you should be looking at these things.
Right.
Particularly if it's something that, if someone is coming to you at such a young age as you were, that's usually a point of like, okay, well, these are strange in a person of this point. I mean, I'm glad that your situation was that you weren't turned away and you did get the diagnosis, but I can guarantee there are multiple people out there that have had the opposite situation where they've had to fight for that diagnosis despite having all of those symptoms because of something like their age, their race, their location in the world. It's extremely frustrating, honestly.
There's unfortunate people like me, and then there's very lucky people like Kamianya mentioned that they, were diagnosed really quickly and then just put on treatment right away, and they are doing so far pretty good from what I've heard.
But yeah, no, it's just I find it a very interesting topic to discuss, how there does seem to be a mismatch between what we know scientifically, what we know of various conditions, and how doctors approach it.
Exactly.
And MS just happens to be one of those that I know quite a bit about, and also take an interest in, because it's one of those that tends to be the brunt of a lot of misdiagnosis, a lot of sticking points. So, bringing us on to our next question quite nicely there, is stigmas, misconceptions. Have you experienced any? What is some that you would like to put a end to? What taboos would you like to discuss about your experience with MS?
Right. So stigmas. MS isn't contagious. MS isn't fatal. Those who have died who had MS are more likely to die from complications of MS. That's where they have less mobility and they have brittle bones, and then they, fall and they break their arm, and then they go to the hospital, and then they get a staph infection, and unfortunately, that's how they pass away. Actually, had a friend of mine, the very first MS friend I ever made. I actually dedicated my last charity stream to her. We were diagnosed about the same time, and she died about 2 years ago because of complications of MS. She had a lot of she had some infections due to being bedridden and being hospitalized, and poor care from the medical professionals there and things like that. Other stigmas would be like trying to think. Something that I mentioned before, sometimes I'll use a medical aid or mobility aid one day, and then the next day I won't need it. I actually I have a handicap placard for my vehicle, and when I got it, it was for when I was feeling very fatigued those days. Oftentimes, you'll see people, uh, people look seemingly fine, parking in the handicap parking spot, even though they, have the credentials and everything. And then you see some asshole key their car and everything like that. Like, well, I have MS. Like, I got this because I'm, chronically fatigued and I can't walk very far. Things like that. Trying to think what else. A big one is from friends and family. Since they know that I have MS and they know that I struggle with it sometimes, that I'm like that all the time, and that they don't even bother inviting me to plans like to going out and things like that, because they just assume that I wouldn't be able to because I'd be too sick or something like that. That's another big thing. Trying to think of what else, but at the moment I can't really think of anything at the moment.
Well, that must have a severe impact on you, both socially and mentally.
The biggest impact is having a chronic illness alone makes you feel alone, because you feel like no one can relate to you. Not only that, you can't really get out and see your friends, and so you're out of sight, out of mind a lot. And I've lost a lot of friends that way because I couldn't go out to the bar, every weekend like I used to, or go play like disc golf every weekend with them anymore or anything like that. So kind of lose touch. Misunderstandings with partners. Sometimes you might need help with something and they just expect that that's going to be like that all the time, as far as other social things is especially online, because people know me, people know that I have MS, and they've heard me talk about the struggles they go through. They don't bother to message me because they assume I don't want to be bothered, when I'm actually just sitting here at the desk like, please, somebody talk to me. I'm so lonely. Please communicate,
I'm sorry, I'm laughing. I'm laughing because I've been there, and I
share the feelings, don't you?
like, it's something that comes up quite often in the podcast for us, where either Paige or I end up giggling, or both of us end up giggling, and it's not because we're finding the topic funny. It's
Right. It's just relatable.
It's sympathetic giggling.
Yeah.
yeah. So
I think sometimes it's a happy release to realize other people feel the same as you.
Yeah.
So it's not something you're happy about, but it's still something to appreciate,
Right.
I guess.
And I guess also they might assume that that's all I'm going to talk about. Like I'm just going to like bitch and complain about like my symptoms for that day, and but actually most of the time I don't really talk about it because it's things that nobody can do anything about, even neurologists and my specialists, you know. And I think that's one thing that people confuse is whenever people vent, they're not wanting you to solve their problems. They're just wanting you to listen.
yeah, I mean, if you just spend 5 minutes with someone, you can determine whether or not they want a solution from you.
Mm-hmm.
Or whether or not they just want to get it off their chest so that they can, or just someone to go, oh my god, or oh, right? It's just sometimes that's all that's needed. But
Right. The correct reply a lot of times is that sucks.
Yeah.
You know.
If you're not sure what the reply is, though, you can just ask, like, do you want advice or do you just want to rant about it? Or you can just say,
Right.
like, is there anything I can do to help? Like, I hate getting, like, what can I do to help? Because it's like, nothing. But it's like, well, now it just kind of feels like I've just told you to fuck off, which isn't quite what I intended. But if you ask, is there anything, that I can just say, no, there's nothing, but thanks. You know, it tends to put less of the onus on the person. But yes.
let's do yoga.
I definitely go, yeah. It's like,
Are you doing okay? We're just over halfway.
Yeah, I'm fine.
Yep. How about you, Paige? You seemed like you were.
I'm always jiggling in pain. It's all good.
Okay,
I
right.
just keep readjusting the chair, so.
Okay. So we've got one last question, and then we'll move on to audience questions. So if you have any questions that you would like to submit, we will answer them shortly. But submit them now through the channel points redemption. And I'm keeping tally of them all. So our last topic of discussion is we'd like to refocus a little bit, because obviously this is quite heavy, sometimes quite emotionally heavy, and we want to try and rethink and not focus entirely on the downsides. So tell us what you can take away from your experience. What good has come of it?
The great things that I've experienced with having multiple sclerosis is being in a place where I can develop empathy. Before I got diagnosed with MS, I was just like a little teenage asshole. I didn't care how you felt or whatever. But because I suffered through things, it made me realize, wait a second, other people suffer through things too. So MS has taught me to put myself in other people's shoes, and then I ask myself how I would approach that situation and how I would treat that person and things like that. Also, having MS has taught me how to not be afraid to ask for help, but also to be my own advocate if the help that I got wasn't really that beneficial, then it's left up to my own devices and to figure out ways that I can find a way to break through this adversity. One thing that I do a lot for people is, I won't be able to like solve your problem, but I will be able to maybe Google some kind of association that has a program that can help you, things of that nature. And also, MS taught me to just value life, live one day at a time. I know that's a platitude, but still, it's true. Live every day like you might not be alive the next day. Do the things that you want to do. You like have goals, have dreams, even if you don't think that you'll be able to accomplish them. Just go ahead and do it. Like I didn't think that I'd ever be married. I didn't think that I'd ever graduate college. I didn't think I'd ever be a homeowner, but I knocked those out of the park. What else would I going to say? It also taught me that, a big thing, a very big thing that it taught me is just because you have the same illness as someone doesn't mean they're going to be your friend. I know that oftentimes people who are newly diagnosed, they meet somebody else with, whatever they have, and they're like, oh, we have so much we can relate to, you have MS, I have MS, we're like two peas in a pod. But sometimes MS may be the only thing that you have in common, and that you have to be very careful, especially on the internet. People who you meet, that they might not be your friend, they might be your worst enemy. The only thing that you share with them is your illness, and that's simply it. And also, MS has taught me that just to never give up, just keep trying, and don't feel down if you can't get something done. Just don't quit. And there was a tweet that I sent out not too long ago, a couple of weeks ago, that if you're chronically ill, this goes out for anybody that's chronically ill. You're not stupid. You're not weak. You're not incompetent. You're not any of those things. You're just sick. And the only thing you can do is to try your best, and that's all that you need to do.
It's great advice, and it's honestly the advice that I know a lot of chronically ill people will tell each other. Terrible at taking the advice themselves. But totally the good advice that really everyone should very much take in and think about, but it's so difficult to do.
It really is. We have, it's so easy for us to give advice to a friend, but to follow our advice on our own is really hard. So a good way to go around that is pretend, when you're talking to yourself, pretend that you're speaking to a friend, but that friend is you.
And if you really struggle, get someone who's just
Yes. Yes.
Get yourself a friend who's gonna tell you exactly the same thing.
Get you a friend that will call out your shit.
Yeah.
Yes.
Because those are best friends to have.
Oh God. But yes, yeah, definitely. Okay, so if there's nothing else that anyone wants to add, we can move on to audience questions.
At least from my side.
Sorry, you didn't. I couldn't hear you. A word you're saying there.
That's okay. Don't worry. I think I'm good from my side.
Okay. All right. So first question, I mean, is from Paige. So do you want to maybe ask your question?
I'll have to scroll back up so I can remember exactly how
okay.
I worded it.
You don't have to. I can scroll back up.
It's all right. I found it. So,
Oh, okay.
yes.
You beat me to it.
It's all right. So I have a couple of friends with MS, and one of those friends has only been diagnosed fairly recently. And I see a lot in him that I saw in myself when I was first diagnosed with my illnesses. And he's asking a lot of questions sort of specifically about MS that I can't necessarily answer correctly. So do you use any public resources or any support groups still for MS that I could point him towards, or another person if they were recently diagnosed?
It depends. What country are they from?
They are in the UK.
In the UK. So I would assume that there would be one in the UK, but in the US. So I know that there's an MS association in the UK. In the US, there is what's called the MS Association of America. And I've done charity work for them before. Basically, instead of putting money towards research and things like that, they actually, what they do is they provide services. They provide help to individuals today. Like they'll help with mobility equipment, vehicle modification, give cars hand controls. One thing I got from them was a cooling vest because I'm a heat sensitive, and I think they do. Oh yeah, they also do they have an MRI fund that they will pay for a first time diagnosis for MRI, or they'll help with a previous MRI. I'll have to do some research for the UK side, but I'm pretty sure I could find some things for your friend.
I think it's just the MS Society, isn't it? For
Yeah,
the
I think it's
UK.
something like that.
Because obviously our healthcare is currently free. Ish. But it's about accessing it.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, I think if for resources along that line, it's the MS Society.
Yeah, I can probably find something for the UK. I'm pretty good at finding those types of things, and even then, like I have my sources who can find some stuff on that. I've got a lot of connections. I've been like dealing with so many societies over the last like almost 20 years. It's really ridiculous.
Yeah, that's awesome. I think that'd be really, really helpful. Just like I understand, I don't know. I know Drac sort of gets it as well, but I don't know if it's the same from your point as well. But I know that when I was first diagnosed, throughout the first few years at least, I experienced a lot of grief that I didn't really know was grief, because it was more just like as I was starting to lose more and more of my ability, like obviously not entirely, but as I was losing and not knowing where it would stop, there was a lot of grief and anger that I was going through that nobody told me was grief or anger, or that it was justified. So I just sort of believed it was just the depression flaring up. And I see that in some of my friends who are recently diagnosed with illnesses, and it's just sort of like I'm trying to like shove community things to them. Like, tell these people, they'll tell you that it's not just in your head and you're not just angry for no reason. Like,
Right.
it's a legitimate thing you're going through, and it is easier if somebody tells you that's legit. So, yes.
Yeah. I mean, I don't think that's something that goes away. It just kind of
That's a part of being human.
becomes more. You just understand where it comes from.
I think it's like any grief that you get for any reason. It sort of it doesn't take on less meaning, but it becomes easier to, it becomes more palatable over time, and you understand it a little more instead of it just being a much more raw emotion that you're just having to experience.
That's another. I'm glad you said that, because that brings up another point. At one point, I was being like, really down on myself because of MS and everything. And my ex-wife was like, "Oh, you should be over that by now. You've had it for so many years." I'm like, you don't get over it unless you actually get over it, as in a cure.
Yeah.
Silly lady.
Yeah.
But
Yeah.
I definitely can feel for those people, because they go through so many emotions. They go through so many things that only they know that they go through. There's no one else that they could talk to or anything like that. So it's like they don't know where to go or where to start. And it's very frustrating, because it could happen like every day, and it gets frustrating, like with my symptoms, like currently right now, like my toes have been like twitching this entire time. They never stop. They twitch 24 hours, and it's so frustrating. And then I had to reach out to my neurologist to give me something, because I couldn't sleep, anything like that. I was really grumpy. That's why a lot of times, if I'm in that mood, I just kind of just isolate myself, because I don't want to like snap at anybody. But that's when you should talk to somebody to maybe get some help for that, instead of just being a grumpy butt all by yourself.
I think it's surrounding yourself with people that'll understand that as well.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, I
A
definitely
good
think it's
support
where,
circle, yeah.
yeah, just something, or just somebody that'll understand, even if you did lash, that there's a reason for it and that you can talk about it. Like, it might not still be okay to have lashed at somebody, but it's, better than it just happening randomly if
Right.
other people understand. So
It's not an excuse, it's a reason.
yes, that's something I keep saying, and it's difficult because I think that's one of the stigma things, like going back to the early questions, that I see sometimes with the anger and the depression you get. And it's like, but it's no excuse to act the way. It's like, it's not an excuse, but it's why it happened. Like,
Mm-hmm.
if
It's
it's
a cause, yeah.
It's
yeah,
more
doesn't mean it was
about
okay, but it means it happened.
it's more about having self-awareness. It's being able to analyze your feelings and emotions and go, okay, so that's where that came from. Like, I understand why I did that, and therefore I can adjust, I can explain, and hopefully correct my response for the next time it comes up, or be self-aware of these things, because I mean,
I quite like the saying, "It's not my fault, but it's my responsibility." Like,
Right.
it's
That's
not
good.
it's not my fault that I suddenly got angry and might have snapped at my husband, but it's my responsibility to apologize and explain why it happened and to check he's okay. Like, it's well, at that point it just feels like courtesy, because nobody else should have to deal with the symptoms of my illness if I can't manage them, but they can at least understand.
Right. It's like, okay, the first step is realization. I was like, okay, I realize that I'm experiencing an emotion. Then you ask yourself, what emotion is that? And then you say, oh, well, I feel lonely. Like, well, why do you feel lonely? It's like, well, nobody talked to me all day, like nobody at all. And they're like, well, did you reach out to anybody? Like, well, no. Then you tell yourself, well, communication is a two-way street.
Oh,
Sometimes
don't do
that
that.
street
We
is
all
dimly
feel so
lit.
called out right now.
And then you tell yourself, thanks, self, you know?
Then you can use that to talk to some friends and say, if I've not said anything for a few days, like, and you have the time, could you just poke me or something? And then try and prevent that for the future if it is something you've got somebody able to support you with.
Exactly.
Yeah, it's definitely about self-reflection and learning.
I also, on that topic, would like to point out that a lot of people with illness, mental health issues, the reason that they often don't reach out is either it takes too much out of them to put in that effort. Like, there's only so much like energy in existence with an illness that you have, and you just cannot donate those precious resources to reaching out. And then there's the other option of feeling like a complete and utter burden to people. Like, it's like, yeah, okay, you may not think that they're a burden, you may really want to hear from them, but their feeling of interacting with you and always having to cancel, or always having to go, well, no, I'm not feeling good, or always having to just, it's always there
ceremony.
in every
Exactly.
relationship that you have. It's always there. It's always a thing. And you're always going to feel like a burden. That's the brain weasels that will always tell you, because it is such a significant factor of your life.
Exactly. And it's like a point I made earlier, putting yourself in other people's shoes. Like, I wouldn't mind, like, if I'd be thrilled if people like send me a message. I wouldn't, be bothered at all. I was like, oh, great. I got to hear from my friends. Like, what do you need? Do you need something? How can I help you? And then like when you like flip the tables, you're like, oh, I don't want, I kind of want to talk to this person, but I feel like I'll piss them off, even though they have no reason to be pissed off, It's one of those things. It's like walking on eggshells for no reason at all, even though like you're walking on like solid stone.
Yeah, I tend to find that I won't enter into a conversation if I realize I've got enough spoons for the first message, but if they ask another question, I'm gonna pass out. I tend to, like, I'll get halfway through a conversation I'm really enjoying, and then part of my brain just goes, I'm so bored! And it's like, why are you bored? It's just like, I don't know, but I need to leave this situation. It's like, could you come back? I need this brain cell to continue. It's like, no, until you do something else, I'm not coming back. And there's times that I'm just like, I just feel like an asshole now, so I'm not gonna message you again, because now I'm just only half here. Because part of my brain's just decided I don't want to do this any longer for absolutely zero reason.
I feel like a lot of times we treat messages like a phone call. It's, a message can always be replied at a later date, but we feel like if we send a message, it's like, oh, are you busy? Sorry. Oh, you're at work? Oh, I can't talk right now.
I don't know. Like, when that happens, I don't know about you or anyone in chat, but if I ignore a message, if I go, yeah, I'll respond to that later.
Nope.
It's gone.
Or I'll respond
It's
6
gone.
days later, like, holy crap, you needed your medicine. Jesus. Oh, whoops.
Yep. It's a I'll put it off till later, and then it is gone.
Jack and I trying to plan a podcast is a nightmare.
I still haven't contacted that person.
Oh, for God's sake, Drac!
But case in point.
Write it down.
Right. Next audience
Well,
question.
I appreciate you replying to my message, Drac.
Yeah. You got Drac on one of those moments where it's like, I can respond now. Or they remembered a week later.
But FYI for anyone who I forget to respond to, that's why. Anyway, next audience question. So what have been the best accessibility tool that you've found in your journey?
The best accessibility tool. Trying to think. The cooling vest is really nice. Just whatever you do, don't put the cold packs in the front pockets because it could get pretty nippy, if you know what I mean. Other than that, the cane that I have right here, it has like these little feet on it, so I could just plop it down like right on the ground. It'll just stay right there.
Oh,
Pretty cool.
I'm always dropping mine in shops, and then I'm like, oh, well, I ain't getting that back.
Yeah, that seems like a really simple solution, and yet so not used as often as it should be.
Recent accessibility things that I've gotten, as far as like streaming and stuff, well, in general, really, Stream Deck helps me out a lot. I just push a button and it does the thing. And also I have a Stream Deck pedal that will like mute my mic before I sneeze. Oh, another thing, so I have decreased dexterity in my left hand, so I can't really type very well on the keyboard, everything, all the keys on that side. So instead, I got one of those mice. Will this be unplugged? Can you even see this? I got one of these mice that has a bunch of buttons out there, and it helps me so much. I am so glad I have this thing. Yeah, you have it too? Nice.
Yeah, no, it is such a godsend for just general usage for so many reasons. But yeah, no, when I saw those pedals come out, those were honestly, I was so happy that they brought out something that is gonna be such a useful tool for so many streamers.
It really is.
Yeah.
Like, I just... And then there's that part of me that goes, it's taken bloody long enough.
Yeah.
But I'm just happy that it's a resource, you know? It's now there.
I appreciate it, but pissed it took this long.
Yeah, I've had a foot pedal for streaming for a year and a half or so, but it's honestly crap. So I'm really hoping that theirs is a good model that properly registers. I'd love to get my feet on one to test it.
Are you talking about the Elgato one?
Yeah, that one specifically looks very cool, but there's too many buttons on it. I keep thinking I'm just gonna close the computer down or something by hitting the wrong side. So
It's really not. I thought the same thing, but it's really not. It's got, a really big one in the middle and then two smaller ones on the side. And
that's good.
the ones on the sides are a little bit raised higher than the one in the middle. So I think you'll have an easy time with it.
Oh, that's good.
Yeah, that's actually a good point. Smart bulbs.
Yeah, smart bulbs.
They seem like a kind of, oh, it's just something fancy, To be able to turn off lights that you've forgotten from your phone or from a single voice command?
Plus, the colours is so good for headaches as well.
Oh yeah.
It's like the yellow or whitish sort of light bulbs, especially if you have the older bulbs that still flicker a bit, are horrendous for headaches. But
Oh
like
yeah, I hate
turning it to a
those.
cooler colour can help sometimes.
Give me
Um,
bright white, and also you just use it as like a little dimmer switch
Yeah,
to get the.
dimmer switch as level of lighting is just, oh, yes.
Plus, if you don't want to put colour corrective makeup on, you just put on the right light bulb and it sorts out your foundation for you.
Mm-hmm.
So that's why I always have blue on, because it stops me going red.
Okay, so next question. You touched on having treatments for symptoms. How did the treatment differ when it came to the illness itself and the symptoms it causes?
So the prescriptions that I've had in the past, they were like anxiety medications, antidepressants, anticonvulsants, like stuff to provoke hunger and things like that. But ever since I got medical marijuana, I replaced probably like 7 prescriptions. Probably not the answer you was asking, but it's a lot of trial and error. Of course, that's how the medical field works. Is they give you something to see if it works. If it doesn't, they'll put you on something else. One one therapist that I went to, they actually did something really cool. They had a DNA test for which medicines actually work for you or not. And a lot of the antidepressants that I was on, that DNA test showed that they didn't work at all. And so they did find one that did work for me, and oh my gosh, it was a world of difference.
Wow, that's interesting.
So maybe, hopefully, if there's maybe like a clinic near you, maybe they have it or something. I don't know. Try it out.
That would be, yeah.
Just made me think of something I can ask my hospital when I next see them. And I'm just like, I need to write that down.
Okay, so I've only got one last question. Unless anyone wants to put any quick ones in the chat while we talk about this one. But if anything, is there something you use as a mantra or remind yourself of when you hit a dark spot?
I'm sorry, I was reading chat. What did you say?
Is anything, if anything, is there something you use as a mantra or remind yourself of when you hit a dark spot?
If I hit a dark spot, I am still trying to find that. I currently don't have anything like that. There's things I try. There's the typical like, oh, just sleep it off or anything like that, or just talk to a friend, or retail therapy or something like that. But not currently. I'm still searching for that. I just kind of just do my best and hold on, and then just try to logically talk myself through it. Be like, hey, you're feeling this way. There might not be some kind of rhyme or reason to, but you know yourself that it's not logical. Write it out the best way that you can. A lot of self introspection and self talk, and try to bring myself back to the logical side of things. And if I can't find a friend to help me or to talk to at that time, it's just to just for so having this disease for so long, I developed so many coping mechanisms that I constantly go back to, and that's one of them is coming back to the realization that things of logic and knowing and realizing things and knowing what the cause might be and trying to find a solution to that. And if you can't really do anything about it at that moment, just try to do your best and hunker down. And most of the time I just sleep it off. But currently I don't really have a way to deal with those types of things. One thing that I really should do, though, is I need to see where I can find a therapist to talk to, because that's one like health thing that I haven't checked off my list, like physical therapy and getting neurologist, all that's checked off. That's like one of the last few things I haven't checked off. So that's something that I'll be searching pretty soon.
All right. Well, Paige, do you have any last questions that you wish to add to the mix?
No, I think we actually covered them pretty well. We got a few extra questions in along the main ones, and I think you've explained it all really, really well, which has been very nice, because although I've been in close proximity with MS for quite a lot of my life, it's never something I've personally learned a ton about. But that's also, I guess, because there's been just a litany of other things as well.
Right. And also it's because you don't have it yourself.
Yes.
So there's really no motivation or inclination to learn about it. But that is one thing that I've actually been trying lately. I've been doing all this MS awareness and everything like that. And I'm like stopping myself and I'm like, wait, I should learn about other diseases too. That way I can relate to those people. And then if I can relate to those people, maybe doing the same thing, they can see that they can relate to me too,
It's definitely helpful when we learn and help advocate for each other as well. But yeah, so I appreciate you taking the time to come and talk with us.
Thank you for inviting me to talk, and I don't know what else to say. My brain is kind of fried. I can't really speak at length very well. That's why, like, when I do stream, I only stream for 3 hours, because talking's hard. Words are hard.
It's surprisingly energetically demanding to talk for long periods of time. But I really appreciate you taking the time to talk to us, share your story, and help us spread a bit more education about MS. Could I get another shout out, please, for both Paige and MrDudeGuySir? I'll never stop saying MrDudeGuySir, because that's always going to be my go-to. It's always been fun to say. But yes, so thank you everyone for hanging out. I hope you found this interesting. Next stream. Wait, did you just shout me out on my own stream? Next stream will be on Sunday. Next podcast will be on the 21st of April. But yes, thank you all for joining us. Thank you both for joining us to talk on the podcast. I hope you all have a good rest of your evening or day. I hope you all have a good weekend ahead. And I will see you all soon. Say bye all.
Bye.
Bye.